So we lent into vulnerability a bit last time.
Yeah, that's our intention,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So let's lean in further, Robin, and see what we can unpack and how that uh, how that plays out for the listeners. Perhaps it reverberates. Perhaps it's somewhat different to their own experience. But
Hopefully, either way, it will start some conversation. I'd really like to have input from the listeners and
yeah,
to have this conversation community.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so I'm just thinking a couple of questions that after our last session, there were some. It did bring up not so many things for me, but it did prompt me to ask a couple of questions of you to kind of get the
Okay.
conversation rolling, because I think there's more that we can learn of each other.
Yeah.
Uh, and the question that was really ringing in my head since the last session was, can you take me to a
Bear with me
can
a
you
second. I'm
take
going to
me
turn the light
to
on.
a situation where perhaps you've wished to be vulnerable, and as a result of that vulnerability you feel that you've lost something. You
A
feel that you've
situation
been
I've wanted to be vulnerable. You mean I've just wanted to be me, kind of
yeah, so
that
you've
kind of
been
situation?
open and honest, but
Yeah.
you felt for whatever reason, we're not casting blame here, for whatever reason, that felt a bit like it had backfired.
Yeah.
When I ask you that, what comes to mind?
It's one of those tell me about your childhood questions for me.
Okay.
And it would be a time I remember watching Lassie come home with my
Oh, I
mum.
remember Lassie. Yeah.
And we had a dog. Our family had a dog, and my mum and I were besotted with this dog. And so, dogs generally, big connection with dogs. So we watched Lassie come home, and I was in tears because Lassie has to go through such torturous journeys and finally makes it home, and it all ends happily after all of that. What's going to happen? So it was quite emotional for me. I was a young child, and it was just, I cried because it was that release of emotion. And my dad came in and said, "What the hell are you crying for?" She got home. "Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry for, cry about."
Wow.
And that just shut down, slam. And I think I probably just walked out and went to my bedroom just to, because that was kind of my safe space. So
Yeah.
get me out of here. I feel totally exposed, totally vulnerable. Run away.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's almost there's two examples of vulnerability in there. There's the openness and vulnerability we started talking about last time, but there's that one meaning. And then there's the vulnerability when faced with an oppressive behavior.
And the fact that we learn from the response to being vulnerable,
Yeah.
because that's kind of like, in a sense, dipping the toe in the water.
Yeah.
And then if your the reception that you get to that is going to determine, particularly when you're very young and impressionable, and you think, oh well, it's not allowed then,
Mm,
and so you don't again, because when it's that intense of a learning, you learn
mm,
it fast. You don't
mm,
try again.
mm, mm. And with all the knowledge and understanding you've got now from working on yourself, from working with clients, did you kind of see that as a source that repeated itself in terms of future life events? Or was it an isolated incident within that environment?
No, it was not isolated. And I don't know if I've talked about it here, about the boss that I had, and I think that was on another podcast.
Okay.
I was talking about my boss in not my first job, but the second job and the third job particularly. He was another man, and he was bullying, and I spent my whole time there. I was there for years, several years, just feeling totally stressed and shut down in terms of I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to keep the peace, head down, do my work, go home.
Mm,
And I was the only person who had the role that I had in that department. So I didn't feel I had anybody. In the second job, I did have colleagues who were doing the same job as me. So we would have regular sort of debriefs and stuff, and I felt I had a safe space.
mm.
But in the other job, I didn't. So that was
Wow.
really challenging.
That I can only imagine that you must have felt very exposed and really nowhere to turn to.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, very tricky situation. How long did you find yourself in that situation for with that particular person? Is it a
I
long
think I
time?
was 4 years in the job
Wow.
as contracted member of staff. And then there was a funding issue, which meant that I was getting my P45 every month and they were just renewing it for a month, renewing it for a month. And I would still then get the P45. We'd go
I'm
through the whole
feeling that
process
stress
again.
already. My goodness.
So it was totally, that kind of, are you living in a chaotic world,
Mm,
unpredictable world? That was me. So I was already so stressed. And then that was happening on top of it all. And my boss was the person who was negotiating the contracts every time. And my husband said to me, "You have had a sense of humor bypass. Just leave because you hate the situation and you aren't the person that I met, first of all. So next time my P45 came up, I said, that's fine. I'm just going to leave." And that left them completely without my role because, as I say, I
mm,
was the only person there who did that role.
mm,
So, oh dear, I had to go back on a freelance basis. And then that gave me the freedom. And because I'd taken that leap
mm,
and started working with other people as well, because I was freelance, I could work with whoever I wanted, kind of
mm,
thing, then I didn't quite give the guy the finger, but I could go into a meeting and go, well, he's just because my role was interpreter. So
mm,
he had this habit of I would be watching somebody because it's BSL. I'm watching somebody and voicing what they're saying, and he
mm,
starts signing a response behind me. So of course I can't see it. He's hearing. He damn well knows that. So I would turn round and kind of go, oh, right. So X is signing. If X would like to go back, oh, right, X is not going back. So I'll just pick up from where I can see, and you'll have to miss the bit before that because I didn't see it and he won't go back. Not quite that bad, but I would just, well, it's not my problem. It's his
mm,
problem.
mm.
So I felt empowered
Yeah, I
and
was
I
just
didn't
about to
feel
use that
vulnerable.
word. We do
Yeah.
use it a lot, that word empowered, and it is a huge nominalization, but it's about, I guess, empowerment is about standing in your power, feeling, that the strength is yours, that the space is yours. Would you
Yeah,
say?
I didn't want to have power over. I
Mm,
just wanted to have power with. I didn't want to make him feel small.
mm,
I just wanted him to realize what he was doing,
yeah,
stop doing it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
to stand up and say, "You're not going to do that to me anymore, mate." And
yeah,
I also had discovered that he bullied people, obviously, as any bully does, bullied people who shrank down if
yeah.
they stood up to him. And unfortunately, he picked on women generally. I also found that out. So I thought, sod that, mate.
Mm,
So the worm turned,
mm,
and yeah, it felt good. It was a big part of my growth, I think, to go back on a freelance basis where you're not my boss anymore, you're not my land manager, you can't fire me, you have no power
mm,
over me. If you don't want to book me, that's absolutely fine. I can find work elsewhere.
mm,
But you need me more than I need you.
mm, mm,
Because I knew the department inside out, so I could do the
yeah.
interpreting that nobody else wanted to do anyway.
Right.
People avoided working there like the plague. I needed co-workers sometimes and it was really difficult to find them. But anyway,
Right.
that's a long story and we're going to talk through our episode without recording it. Oh, we are recording.
We
Sorry, I
are
didn't
recording
realize.
it. Don't worry. I wanted it to be as casual uh, and as comfortable as we can possibly be. So I pressed record from the very moment you came into the room.
Fab, you can
Uh,
capture it all.
so yeah, that was a really nice share. Thank you. Uh, and that was taking us all the way through from vulnerability all the way through to empowerment.
Yeah.
I guess they're polar opposites, aren't they?
I
Can you
think
be empowered and vulnerable?
I think you need to be empowered to be vulnerable in the right way. Because I think we
Right.
touched on this last time, that there is a way, and I think it's so important to be able to feel able to be vulnerable, because then we're open.
Mm,
Then we're, like I was saying, not power over, we're power with.
mm,
That's vulnerability. Going into any relationship, be that a romantic relationship, a friendship relationship, a working relationship, that's vulnerability.
mm,
Because, like I kind of was alluding to with the job, I felt I was in a position of less power
yeah.
because I felt they had power over me. They could dismiss me, they could, you know, whatever. I could be
Mm,
sacked or whatever it
mm,
was. But even when we're power with, when we're feeling like, yeah, we're two equal partners here,
mm,
I'm still open to you deciding that what you just said was rubbish, or,
mm,
you know, not agreeing with me,
mm,
or those kinds of vulnerabilities. And I think to be able to be open to that, we have to have a certain level of, I am comfortable in my own skin, I can step into
yeah.
my own power. I'm not needing your approval. I'm
Mm,
asking for your approval.
mm,
I value your approval. But if you don't approve of me, that's okay because I do. I know in my own skin that I'm quite comfortable with what I'm saying. And if I say something that you disagree with, maybe I'll learn something.
mm,
And I think that takes vulnerability.
mm, mm. I think you're definitely right. I think it's sometimes it's not a catalyst moment that moves you from vulnerability to that kind of abusive kind of vulnerability to a point of empowerment. Uh, but sometimes it takes that 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 environmental change in order to act as one of the catalysts that together create that new person. And then standing in your power, it takes me back to transactional analysis, really, because that's all you wanted. You wanted an adult transaction.
Whereas I felt very much the child. And partly that
Yeah.
was me because the situation was pressing my buttons. And I
Yeah.
recognize that. And I feel it's very important that I owned that for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't his fault.
Mm-hmm.
He was behaving out of his situation, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have strayed away because nothing changed about him in the whole process. It was me that changed.
Mm-hmm.
It was me that was then able to say, no, I don't accept this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something in me that changed, not something in him. So if
And
I'd have been in that state to start with, it would have been a very different
yeah, and it's
would have
only
panned out very
during that moment of retrospection that we can
different.
see that was a pattern that started when we were tiny, yeah,
Yeah.
where we really didn't have the opportunity to have an adult to adult transaction
No, no. And the
because
thing is as well that we get pushed back into that, don't we? That inner
yeah,
child is
yeah,
still there, is still feeling like 4, 5, 6, whatever
yeah,
years old,
yeah,
and we're still then responding in that kind of behavior, which I
yeah,
certainly was.
yeah.
Head down, carry on,
Mm, mm,
be as small as you possibly can, be invisible if at all possible.
mm. And I talk a lot about this, but and it's fine seeing that golden thread, and you can only ever see it in your rearview mirror.
Yeah.
But suddenly something happens, and you think, bloody hell, that was me when I was 7.
Yeah.
My dad did that with me,
Yeah.
and here's somebody else doing the same thing, and I'm letting it
Yeah.
happen. No more. But I was letting it happen. My goodness. And
Yeah.
then
I was letting
suddenly
it
it's
happen.
like an awoke moment, isn't it?
It's the light bulb
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for sharing that. That was really nice, Robin. Thank you. Uh, I'm trying to think if there's something. For me, vulnerability is shown a lot through my life, through conversations. not necessarily like this, but relationship based conversations, because I remember when I was running an age discrimination charity back in year 2000s, and uh, the chap who was chairman who ran the charity, uh, he used to do it all from home. And he'd been married to his wife, he'd got Parkinson's, and married to his wife for 30, 40, 50 years, I think. Uh, and I wasn't married at the time, but I was thinking very much about how I wanted a relationship, how I would welcome that in my life. Uh, and I said to Philip, I said, Philip, you've been married however many years, I think it was about between 40 and 50. What keeps your relationship alive? What's the common anchor that you both have? And he said to me, we don't have an anchor because we all change, and the parallel that maybe we started with gets divergent. But in order to form a proper relationship, you need to communicate to that changed individual and appreciate and acknowledge the things that have changed for them to get them to the place we are. And he always used to lean into that love connection when that relationship was first formed, and that's always there. In fact, he told me that he told me the story of how he and his wife had met, and in fact, rather like a fisherman's tale, it became bigger. It became more shiny, more romantic, more beautiful because it was a while away. And, I did think to myself at the time, is that some sense of regret or uh, some sense of wanting to cling on to something that felt really precious? But no, it was, I think for Philip and his wife, it was about being able to recover that in the present moment so it can shine again,
I
where they
think
were in that
sometimes
place.
we look back, don't we, and we see things with rose tinted glasses, or you tell a story again and again and again, and you not embellish necessarily, but you polish it
Mm,
so that it has a more of a flow to it.
mm,
Because you're getting ready maybe to tell the grandkids, oh, there's one for the grandkids.
mm,
And so you pick out maybe the bits that you think the listener will enjoy. It's like any hero's tale. You create it in such a way, and there is a whole skill to storytelling, isn't there? It's
mm,
big in Ireland, where I'm from, the Irish culture we are, and the Welsh culture where I live now. Very big into storytelling because they
mm,
were an oral culture. They didn't really use writing as
mm.
much. So yeah, storytelling is it's a way of connecting. It's a way of passing on our histories to those who follow.
It is, and it really it gives us a true sense of identity because
Yeah,
those stories we tell ourselves become
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah.
And in fact, in terms of transitioning and moving on, that story is the key anchor point. The escape story is the very ladder that oftentimes we cling to in order to pull us out.
And we have
So,
to be able to see that story and see it as being different to where we've been, where we are now,
yeah,
and thus create where we want to go.
yes, yeah, that's right.